My name is Newton Barta with 3D Landscaping and Irrigation, and I'm going to be going over the clock today here at one of the yards that we installed here at one of the houses, just to kind of give you some general information on how to run through your clock, what to look for, if there's any problems or issues with the clock, and hopefully we can resolve any questions that you have concerning it with this video. Right now, when you usually come up to the clock, you'll see that there's usually our sticker on the outside. This is one of the brands that we use, is a Hunter brand. We also use another brand called Rainbird. Today we're going to go over the Hunter clock. Rainbird and Hunter clock are pretty much the same thing. So if you have one or the other, the options and the settings are generally the same. Usually, 9 times out of 10, the keys are usually installed here on top or laying on top of the clock. If the clock is locked, usually it will be in a sideways position like that and you can't open it. Turn it straight up and down. It's going to be a little tough to open. It's got a nice little clip here to keep it from wind blowing it open, so you pull on it, and now it's open. Sometimes you'll also find a sticker of ours on the inside of the clock, which has our name, telephone number, contact, when the warranty expires on your actual system, and also the date it was installed. And then if you have any problems or whatever, our phone number is on there also. So when we start off with the clock here, it's in the run position. And as you can see right now, it's got the time on there and it's flashing. That means it's on, it's got power. If for some reason this isn't showing up on here, please check the plug, make sure the electricity's on, or it might have been unplugged. Somebody might have unplugged it, but 9 times out of 10, it's usually on and it's got the time displaying. If there's any problems with the clock or any problems with the system in general, you don't know what's going on or you're having issues, a good rule of thumb is just to turn it off, call us at our office, and we'll send a technician out to actually assess the situation, see what the problems are, or your concerns dealing with your irrigation system. But for now, generally when you open the clock, it's in the run position. We've already pre-programmed the clock to run at certain times, to water the grass, to get it rooted in, and to make sure everything's watering properly. In order to go through here, if you want to make any changes, or the clock gets unplugged, or there's something wrong with the clock, or you need to change a date on it, we need to do programming. If you flip it to basically date and time, that means it's just we're going to go through there and change the date and time on the clock. So the clock knows what day it is, what time it is, and knows what time to come on. So right now, as you see, the 2019 is actually flashing. Well, it looks like 2019. Well, that's the year. It's pretty simple on these clocks. Plus and minus actually allows you to change what's displayed on the clock. So if it was 2018, we would hit the minus key, and it's going to basically minus whatever's on there. But we know it's 2019, so I'm going to hit the plus sign, and that gets me to the right year. Your left and right arrows move you through the menu. So if we go to the right, now we're on month, so that's 6. So that's basically that's June. So if we want to change it to May, like I said, plus and minus changes the actual settings on the clock. So that's the month. We right arrow again. Now we're on the day. If for some reason you forgot to change the month, you can always do the left arrow and it will move you back through the menu. But we're just going to move forward. So today is the 28th. It's showing that it's Friday. If it was Saturday, plus moves us forward, but we know it's Friday today, so we're going to minus to take us back. Going through the rest of this menu, right now we're on AM and PM. It will actually do AM, PM, and it will also do 24-hour. If you're military and you like doing 24 hours, the clock will also do that. Right now it is in the morning, so we're going to leave it at AM. Like I said, plus and minus changes it. So it is 9 o'clock. That's our hour. These are our minutes. And now we're back to the year. So that's everything in that menu for the setting the time and date on the clock. Here's where everybody gets confused. We're on start times now. Everybody thinks that start times means it's going to start each and every individual zone. Start times means what time do we want it to come on? Do we want it to come on early in the morning? Do we want it to come on late at night? Right now, this clock is set at 7 a.m. And you see the little A there, and it's got a clock. The clock means that's what's, the clock's running. It's going to start when the clock comes on. We always want to have that program A there. If there's any other letter besides program A, there's a little button over here that's called the PRG button, and it's a circular button. If you hit it once, it's going to go to a program B. Hit it again, it's going to go to program C. Hit it again, it will take you back to program A. We always want to be on program A. If there's any other special settings you want to do, if you want it to water the backyard more, we would use those other programs. Please call the office to have a technician to step you through over the phone. But for right now, for your general use, we always want to be on program A to keep things simple. So right now we've got number 1, which is start time number 1, and this one's coming on at 7 a.m. So if we right arrow over again to move through the menu, program 2 is off, or start time 2 is off, start time 3 is off, and start time 4 is off. So right now we just want this to come on at 7 in the morning for this time at this house and run at 7, go through the full cycle, and then shut off again. This clock has the potential of starting 12 times. So that's why I was telling you earlier, always to be on program A. And if you find something on program B, you always want to make sure that they just say off. And in order to do that, if it has a time, like I said, plus or minus changes the actual settings on the menu. Minus it all the way back to where it says off. Program C is off. Program A. All we want is program A running. So that's when we want the actual system to come on in the morning and start watering the grass. Now we're going to move on to run times. Now this is where we go through every zone and we set a certain amount of time that we want the zone to run. 9 times out of 10, zone 1 is going to be your plants. And once the plants are established and everything, 10 minutes is usually a pretty good time. You can actually back that off a little bit once they get bigger or more mature, to like say 7 or 5 minutes. But for right now, since this is a newer home, we want it to run for 10 minutes. Each zone will have a specific run time, depending on what you have in your zone, whether it be drip in your plants or sprays in your plants is going to determine the amount of run minutes that we actually have for that zone. At this house, we have drip in the front flower bed, so it's going to have to run a little bit longer, and that zone's a little bit later on down the line in this one. But for right now, in order to change time on the actual zone for your specific area, the plus and minus will actually add minutes and take minutes away. So like right now, zone 1 at this house is basically grass and it's the front yard and it sprays. So it puts out a lot of water. So 10 minutes is more than substantial in order to water that grass properly. When we move through the menu, so like zone 2 here is going to be one of your side yards. In 5 minutes on a lot of these side yards, because they're small, a lot of times they're shaded. 5 minutes is more than enough to run on there. And again, if it's a different area, say it is a bigger side yard, you can increase your minutes or decrease your minutes here. So we're going to go to zone 3. Again, on this house here, it's 5 minutes. It's another side yard. Now we're at zone 4. It's another small area on this house, so it needs to run for 5 minutes also. Zone 5, basically now we're in the backyard. 25 minutes is a pretty good rule of thumb because it's a bigger type of head. It's called a turf rotor. And a turf rotor basically uses the same amount of water that you use in your front yard that took 10 minutes to cover double the size of the area. So more than likely it's going to take double the amount of time to water that area in order to water it properly. So that's why they're running for 25 minutes. If you decrease the time in your bigger areas and like that, you will see the yard stress out and it will start drying up, and it usually hurts the yard. So on your bigger areas and stuff like that, minimum is 25. And then zone 6 is going to be the actual drip for the flower bed in the front. And if you have drip in your flower bed, those emitters actually emit 1 gallon per hour. So in order to get the same amount of water down that a spray would put out, we have to run it for a little bit longer period. So 25 minutes is substantial in that. And this house is basically a 6-zone house. When you get to the end of the run times, it's going to have the letter A. And remember I talked about that earlier, program A. So on program A, our total run time is 1 hour and 15 minutes. So in order for this, when that start time comes on at 7 and it completes its full cycle, it should be done by 8:15, 8:16. So that means it's done. It's done, gone through the whole cycle, ran through its run times on each zone, and it's finished. So now we're going to move on to water days. So now on this lot here, it's kind of new, and we've been having a lot of rain here lately, but we're watering 3 days a week. So right now, on Monday, you see it flashing, and it's got a circle with a slash through it. And that kind of looks like the old Ghostbusters sign. So I'm telling my age here, but usually if it has a 0 and a slash through it, that means it's not going to water. So if we want to change that, we hit the plus sign. Remember I said you can change that by hitting the plus and minus. So now it moved Monday with the raindrop. So that means it is going to water, and it moved me over to Tuesday. So basically Tuesday's flashing with the raindrop. And if it is flashing with the raindrop, that means it's going to water the yard that day. If we don't want to water Tuesday, again, minus would take it away. But for this clock, and say you messed up, hey, I want to go back to Monday, but I don't want it to water on Monday. So we arrow key to the left, minus sign takes Monday, but I want to water on Tuesday, plus sign puts it on. And again, remember, we're on program A. If we do go into water restrictions, please go to their website, see what days you're allowed to water. Most times, if your address ends in 0 and 1, that would be a Monday. And then it just goes on up from there. So like Tuesday would be 2, 3, Wednesday would be 4, 5. Thursday would be 6 and 7, and then Fridays would be 8 and 9. So if your address ends in any of those numbers, depending on which day it is, you'd have to come back to the clock, move through the menu, and just select that day. And a lot of times they will have water restriction times, so you can either water in the morning or in the afternoon. There's a pretty cool little feature on here that would help you during the winter months, or what we call seasonal adjust. And what seasonal adjust means is during the cooler months, when it's like, November, December, and you don't need to water the grass as much, instead of you having to go back and program, you saw we had like 5 minutes for zone 1, 10 minutes for zone 2, and all that. Basically what you can do is come to seasonal adjust, and right now it says 100%. So whatever we had programmed in there, if we had zone 1 for 10 minutes, it's going to water for 10 minutes. But say it was December, and during your seasonal adjust, the normal watering rate is decreased drastically. So you basically say you want to cut it to a third. So instead of running at 100%, say we just want it to run 30% of the time. So now if I go back to my run times, earlier, remember that said 10 minutes? Now it says 3 minutes. So instead of the homeowner having to go to each individual zone and change that setting for each one and hit this plus and minus key 100 times, you can just go to your seasonal adjust, decrease it during your cooler months, because you still want the grass to get water, plants to get water, stuff is still thriving and growing, even though it looks like it's dead. It's what they call dormancy. It's basically gone dormant. It's gone to sleep for the winter, and once it warms back up, everything will green back up and come back. So that's just an easy way of you going through there and adjusting the times. Same thing during the hotter months. Say you want it to run longer. Hey, I need it to, it's really hot. I need an extra 10, 3 or 4 minutes on each zone. If I went to 130%, I go back to my run times. Now instead of my 10 minutes, it's running for 13. So it's a pretty cool little feature that they have on the clock. We always leave them at 100%. That way, whatever's programmed in the clock, that's what it's going to run. As we move on around here, I'm going to bypass SolarSync. A lot of that's on there because it's what we call it's a real smart rain sensor that Hunter provides. It actually reads the waterfall. It goes off of the actual state's rainfall for the year. It will read precipitation rate, humidity in the air, the temperature, the air in general. So it's just kind of like your own little weather station, and it will actually program the clock for you to adjust what's been going on during that time period. It's a cool little feature, but it will actually get you in trouble. It'll actually water more when it's hotter. When it does rain around, it will water less, but mainly when it's hotter, it wants to keeps increasing the minutes. This clock's not set up for that. We just have a generic rain sensor that we have, and I'll be going over that here in a minute. Right now, if for any reason, say you fertilized your yard in the front, or you did some work in the front and you want to water just the front zone, we have an option here called manual with the hand on it. So if I'm on station 1 and I've got it on manual here and I flip this to run now, basically what's going to happen is on this manual setting, whatever station you have selected here on the clock, it's going to run for the allotted time that it has programmed, and you'll notice a little sprinkler there flashing. That means that zone is running. It's going to run for that amount of time, and when it's done, shut off and go back to the original program that it originally had. So if you needed to water just the front yard a little extra, you just come to manual, select the zone you want. I usually count to 3, flip it back to run, and it's going to run that zone for a lot of time and turn off. And you can do that for any zone that you have in your yard on your clock. And like I said earlier, if you are having problems, concerns, or there's water running down the street, or you've got a head that's just spraying water and you can't fix it, just turn the system to off. Call somebody here at 3D Landscaping at the number on the front of the box, and we'll be glad to help you, step you through it, and go through everything. Also, one other thing on the clock here that I forgot to kind of go over, right here, you got a sensor bypass. And right now I have this one bypassed because we got a lot of rain last night. So when the clock's in the run position, you normally see just the time. If I kick this to active now, it just rained. So guess what? That's telling me that our rain sensor sensed that it rained. It rained a little bit over 1/8 of an inch, which triggered the rain sensor to actually expand, and then it basically opens a circuit. It tells the clock, hey, do not water. We got 1/8 of an inch of a rain here. We don't need to run until that sensor dries out. If for some reason this is on here all the time and it's been 100 degrees and it hadn't rained in 2 or 3 days, chances are the rain sensor could be bad. Wires could have got cut. Something could have happened to it. If you need your system to run, flip it to sensor bypass. It's going to ignore the rain sensor and do whatever the clock says in here that we have programmed in the clock right now. Say you just got through cutting the grass, you fertilized it, and you want to give it just extra watering and you want to run through the whole system. All you have to do is right here, as long as it's in the run position, hold down this right arrow here where the hand's at for about 3 seconds. Release it. It's basically going to go to zone 1. So whatever we had programmed in here earlier for all the zones, it's going to run through that one time, turn off, and go back to its original setting. So if you cut the grass on Tuesday, but it's watering on Thursday, you want to give it that extra watering, just come back here, hold that hand down. One watering, it's done. It won't water again until Thursday. If you are one of the homeowners that are really into your yard and want it really manicured and you'd like a little bit better options, the clocks that we install here are commercial grade clocks. They're kind of like our entry-level clocks that we have here. We do have other clocks that we do offer for homeowners that will actually are Wi-Fi capable. We can put a Wi-Fi stick in there, upgrade the clock to where we'll take a Wi-Fi stick so you can actually control it from your phone. So if you're away and you want to be able to check on your system, see if it's running or if anything's going wrong with it, or program the clock while you're away, or actually if you're going on vacation and you want to be able to just turn it on and make sure it gets some water while you're gone, you'll be able to do that. 3D does offer those upgrades. If you have any questions about that or you want to upgrade your clock, we can do that for you. The reason why we put the entry-level ones in here, a lot of homes that we do are new. So there's no Wi-Fi here, nobody's moved in, so it's kind of hard to do all that when you don't have the internet capability. And who knows, some homeowners, they just like having, the generic style clock, but there are some homeowners that really like to take care of their yard and they want all the bells and whistles. And here at 3D, we can do that for you, upgrade you to a different clock, which will do Wi-Fi and take care of all your other needs for you. Right now, I'm going to kind of walk you through what I call the heart and soul of the system. It's where we basically tie into your water line or your water service going into your house. I'm going to say 90% of the time you will find these items or these actual pieces of irrigation equipment that we use in the front yard, generally within 2 or 3 feet of your water meter. Right here we have the water meter that's going to the house. As you can see right now, water meter's not spinning or anything. See how that's not spinning there? He's fixing to turn that zone on right now. There it is. Oh wow, we got flow now. So if you see something like that, yeah, that is a leak. So now that he's got it off, hey, stop spinning. Shouldn't be a leak there. So here at this house, you can see the water meter's right here. So this is your water purveyor who's providing water to your house. Water's going to pass through here. Now you're going to see these other 2 boxes here, and that's normally your shutoff valve to your house and a pressure regulator to your house. Then guess what? You'll see another 6-inch valve box that we saw earlier when we talked about the valves. This is our irrigation control valve right here. And on this valve, where we tie it into your water system, this is the shutoff. So if for any reason you're having major issues, if there's water coming out of the ground, say in the center of the yard, and it just won't shut off, and you turn the clock off and it's still coming out of the yard, come out here, come to this valve right here. And if you're having those kind of issues, right now you see it's in line. So if it's in line, that means it's on. So I'm going to reach down in here and I'm going to basically turn it to the right to close it. So now if it's perpendicular to the line, that means it's off. And if it's off and there's still water spraying out of the ground, say on this side or somewhere else, I'm going to say you probably got an issue with your line going to your house. Because once we turn this off here, there is no more water going to the irrigation. Yeah. So any other links that you have would be non-irrigation related. So now I'm going to go ahead and turn this back on because it was on. We want it to work. We want it to water the yard. So as long as it's in line, we want it to work. So that's our shut off to basically shut the water off to the irrigation system if we have any major problems. As we move up the line here, you'll see a big 12-inch rectangular box here. Inside this box is what we call your backflow device. And your backflow device protects your drinking water from your irrigation water. So what that means is as water passes through that, what we call this is a double check assembly. And at some houses, we will have a double check assembly. And at other houses, we'll have an RP, which will be above the ground. But I'm going to say 80% of the time, 85% of the time, you're going to have a double check in your yard. And we're going to use this for an example right now. So water passes through, comes in through your double check. Your double check has 2 valves. If for some reason you can't get this valve to shut off, if you need to shut the water off to the irrigation, you have these 2 options here also. So like I said earlier, in line means the water's on. If I turn this, if I oppose it or make it perpendicular, the water's off. And like I said before, if there's still water coming out somewhere, you have a non-irrigation problem. So again, this system's working. I'm going to turn it back on. So now we got water passing through here. What this device does is once the water passes this second check valve over here, there's no way, if this thing is working properly and it's supposed to be tested also, if it's working properly, it will not allow water to backflow into your drinking water. Because it's, during those winter months when you're not running your irrigation system and, the water's been sitting in those lines for 2 or 3 months, we don't want that getting back into your drinking water and making you sick or making your kids sick or anything like that. So we put these in to protect you from that. So as it leaves here out of the double check box, guess what? We got another 6-inch valve box here. And like I said before, we had those valves for the actual zones. This is what we call the master valve. And what the master valve does is, while this is all on and it's in working condition and working order, the only place you have water pressure through your whole irrigation system while it's off is right here. So if you were digging in the yard and you hit a line in the yard, there's not going to be any water pressure on your lines in the yard. The only time you will have any water pressure throughout the whole irrigation system in your yard would be when the clock is actually running or running through your actual watering time. So if it came on at 7, that valve's going to open, it's going to charge the system, and then it's going to run. And then when it's through watering, like it was at earlier, hour and 15 minutes, so at like 8:15, 8:20, when it shuts off, the only place you're going to have water pressure would be right in here. And that's it. And that's why that master valve's in there. So the system's not charged all the time. We're going to go over the rain sensor that we have set up here at this house. Earlier I had told you that the sensor was actually active, which meant that it was turning the clock off. So last night it had rained the night before. Well, since it rained, what happens is the rain comes in through the top here of the sensor. It's got these little cork gaskets or filters in here, and I'm going to show you that right now. See those little cork filters or cork washers in there? The rain actually goes into there, it soaks it in, and then as it soaks it in, that cork gasket swells. And depending on what our settings are at, determines when it's going to turn off. So right now it's at an 8, so this thing's pretty tight, so that's off. And say, hey, I'm homeowner, I want it to turn off at 3/4. So if we adjust our settings here on the sensor, now you can hear it clicking. Now it's free because it hasn't rained 3/4 of an inch here. We like ours tight just because the place that we're at right now doesn't require a lot of water, and makes sense to do it that way. Depending on how many zones you have will determine how many valve boxes you actually have in your yard. So like here, we're in the front yard of this house here, and you'll notice there'll be little green 6-inch valve boxes everywhere. And they'll be in the ground. And basically, if you just take the cover off, when you look inside there, you're going to see a bunch of wires and go, oh my God, what am I going to do with all that? Well, it's pretty simple. I'm going to say 90% of the time, whenever you get into one of these, you're going to have what we call a white, a red wire, and a green wire. Well, the red wire at the clock basically distinguishes which zone is it's going to turn on. Sorry about that. The white wire is what we call our common wire. It's almost like the common wire on your car or truck or your battery. Red is hot, white is negative. Same thing. You're probably wondering about this green wire here. Well, we install this green wire just as kind of a common customer courtesy in it. Plus, it makes it easy for us to do repairs. A lot of times, sometimes we'll get stuff where like a gopher will chew through a wire, or the wire dog digs up anything. The wire breaks for some reason, and hey, Newton, my front yard zone's not working anymore. So we come out here and we test the wires, and we're like, you know what? Hey, that cable going to that zone is bad. Well, guess what? 3D installs a spare wire, which I call it my money wire, because it makes it easier for us to do the repair for you without damaging any of your yard. So instead of us having to trench up your yard and put a new wire here, we've actually got a spare on hand that we can use. Now, if it's multiple breaks, yes, we'll generally use the green wire to the furthest valve that's away and then repair back that way, trying to, cause the least amount of damage as we could to the yard. So that's why that green wire's in there. And you'll notice it's not connected to anything. It's just there to help us do repairs later on if there is any problems. And also on the valve here, you'll notice it's got like these 2 red wires coming out of it. That's what connects to these other 2 red and white wires. And on here, there's a solenoid. Basically, it says you can actually run this thing manually if you want to. We don't advise homeowners to do this. This is just for technicians to come out here. If you're not home for some reason, we can actually turn that zone on, do some troubleshooting, see what's going on with it, and then turn that zone off. If you notice that there are multiple zones running at the same time for some reason, say you turn on your front yard and your backyard's coming on, sometimes these solenoids, they don't get seated down all the way. They might be a little loose, how I turn that. So what you might want to do is just, if that zone is running, just go to that, pop the green box off, And make sure this solenoid here where it says quarter turn, you notice how it says off this way, righty tighty, lefty loosey. So we want to go right and we want to tighten it. And if it's tight and you go back to your clock and you run that zone again and that zone's still coming on, well then there's a problem internally and you need to call the office and we'll send a technician out to do the repairs for you. So what I'm going to do now is explain to you that on these heads here, they're actually connected to the head that you see in the yard are actually connected to a swing joint. So if you step on it or push on it or pull on it or whatever, it's not hard piped. It's basically going to kind of flex and move and it's not going to break. And you'll find those through the whole yard of your irrigation system. The state mandates and the cities that we work in, they do require them around flat work. And that's why they were designed to do that. But 3D just doesn't do them around flat work. We do them through the whole yard. A lot of people don't know this, but you can actually pull the stem out. And if you really want to fine tune this thing and get it to where you really want it, you can actually grab this stem and turn it. And it will actually click left or right. And it's just a fine tuning tool. So if you got a little bit, say you got the nozzle screwed on here and it's just, hey man, it's spraying over here on my concrete a little bit, but you can't adjust it through the nozzle. You can just pull this up, move it left or right a little bit, and it'll get it right where you want it. And then to control your arc and everything, the spray nozzle that we have on here, this is a Hunter spray nozzle. And if you need to open it, you're going to open it to the left. And then in order to know where your actual left side is going to start or your right side is going to start, on the top of this nozzle, there's a little dot. And that's where that dot is. So wherever that dot's at, if it's pointing right here next to the concrete, that means the sprays pattern is going to start right here. So in order for me to open it or to get more of an arc here to cover this area, I basically take it and I just open it a quarter of a turn. And then I'm moving that dot where it originally started to where I want it to end up at, which is right here. That's pretty simple on how to adjust the spray heads. Now, I'm going to tell my boss, and not everybody can do this, I guess, but I'm going to tell my boss to turn the clock on so I can tell him what to do one time. Hey, Ray, can you turn that zone on for me, please, sir? Now, Ray turned on the sprinklers for us back there. So you can see the spray head's actually open. I got it set here. Here's my right side indicator. The left side's actually blowing over a little bit. So now I want to close that pattern. So I'm right here. But say the right side was off a little bit. Well, I can just grab this stem and I can get it exactly where I want it. So if I want it right there, I move the stem. Hey, it looks good. Now I can go, hey, my left side needs to be opened up a little bit more on this nozzle. So I'm going to take my hand here and just twist this top of this nozzle open a little bit. Get it right where I want it, and we want it throwing into that other head. And the spray pattern looks good. It's not a lot of mist. You see a lot of big drops. Big drops are good. That's what you want. If it is misting or it looks like, almost like real foggy looking, that means there's too much pressure and it's not watering properly. But this looks really, really good here. This is what we call an MP3000. It's got a blue top on it. And basically this head will actually water from 90 degrees, which is a corner, on up to 210 degrees. You can actually see it while it's working right now, and it basically looks like a bunch of little octopus legs blowing out. We really like these just because they work well under low pressure. Their match precipitation rate's really, really good. They water very, very efficiently. And then overall, they're just kind of indestructible, honestly. They're just a good, large turf rotor spray. We can turn it, hear it clicking, get it right where we want it. And then like, hey, well, I want to open that arc up some more. Like I said earlier, that chrome ring, you can grab it. Oops, sorry about that. Open it. And now instead of it being a 90, now it's a 180, but we don't want it spraying on our fence. So now I'm going to close it, which is to the left, kind of opposite of what the spray heads are. And it'll actually close the arc down to a 90. This is one of our turf rotors that we installed in the backyard here at this house. It's basically a Rainbird 5004. As you can see, it's got the number 5000 there, and it's got a plus and minus. And it almost looks like a little arrow pointing here. So basically what that allows us to do, it tells us that it's actually, the arrow's on this side. The arrow's pointing on which direction the nozzle's facing right now. So right now this one's facing that way. If we wanted to adjust this rotor, you can actually turn it by hand, left and right here. You can hear it kind of spin and click, and then it goes back the other direction. So there's basically what they call a left side and a right side indicator. This one's going all the way back around. The reason why that is because it's in the middle of the yard, and this is one of our 360 rotors. But if it was in the corner, if we wanted it to do a 90, there's a little tool here that you actually have to use in order to adjust these. It's almost like a little screwdriver. If you had a little screwdriver, that would work also. And right here where it says plus or minus, you would actually stick this in the ground here, or stick it in this hole here, you'll feel it kind of fall down into a slot. And then you can turn it to the left, which means it's going to basically close the arc, or turn it to the right, which is where the plus sign's at, which means it's going to open the arc. And on this one, you can hear it actually click. So when it's clicking, that means it's going to be in 360 mode. So it's going to basically go in a full circle. So whenever you are setting these, if it is in a corner, you want to get to where they have basically what they say is a left side indicator. So wherever it stops at, that means that's going to be your left side. If you want to move it, say this was in a corner and our fence was here and here, I'd want it to start here and then basically adjust accordingly. Either close the gap or open it. So that's just kind of a quick, simple deal on how to adjust those big turf rotors in your backyard. And in here, we've kind of, whenever we do plants like this, we kind of wrap it around them, or we'll grate what they call grading it, or actually putting the irrigation, the drip lines in line by the plant so they'll get watered properly. If you do see any of this drip tubing exposed, like I've got it exposed here, it's always best to kind of, and it's real easy, it's always best to kind of dig it out, dig it under, get it underneath the mulch, just because you don't want the drip tubing exposed to the sun. Sun kind of damages it, dries it out, makes it brittle. So if you can keep it under the mulch, which allows the water to get down in the ground and not evaporate, and keep it covered up, your system will work 100 times better, your plant will feel better, and it will grow faster if that's all properly covered and manicured right. Basically, our warranty is for 1 year. It covers any major manufacturer defects and stuff like that. If you got a problem with the clock, nozzle broke, or the rain sensor's not working or operating properly, we'll come out and fix it free of charge for the first year. And again, your warranty's here on the clock. This one expires on June 2020. 3D also provides free adjustments up to the first 30, and we'll give you some 30, 45 days. You know, if you've got some issues where the sprays are spraying on the fence and it's not adjusted right, we will come out and adjust it for you, you know, through the first 45 days. Anything after that is kind of up to the homeowner. It's always a good general rule of thumb to come out at least once a month. It's like anything else. You know, if you got a car, you know, you're supposed to change oil every 5,000 miles. You're not going to let that go for 15,000, because in the long run, it's going to cost you more to replace an engine than it would just to, you know, do a $35 or $40 oil change. Same thing here with your irrigation system. You want to kind of take care of it. Check it periodically. If you do have a maintenance guy that's cutting your yard or maintaining it, a lot of times those guys don't turn it back on when they run through the yard. And he might have clipped a head, or he might have stepped on something or broke something. So it's always good at least once a month to come out here, run through the whole system, just kind of check everything to make sure everything's operating properly. Sprays are spraying right, the rotors are blowing right, you don't have any water running down the yard or anything like that. Because if you check it now, it's going to save you money now rather than having a $400 or $500 water bill in the long run. And just also keep in mind, for homeowners that have, some of our homeowners have big, huge yards, 15, 16 zone yards. Those require a lot of watering, and you will, normally have a little bit higher water bill than the regular, what I call your postage stamp yards or your smaller yards. Also, just for homeowners information, and maybe you want to know how much your irrigation system is using every watering, or when it does go through its watering cycle, you can always use 12 gallons per minute as a rule of thumb. Here at 3D, we try to keep all of our zones under 12 gallons a minute, just because as the neighborhood grows, there's going to be more people watering, water pressure does go down. So we try to design the system to where it will run most efficiently and economically as possible. But you can always say around 12 gallons per minute per zone. So if our clock basically waters for an hour and 15 minutes, well, I usually just convert that. So that's going to be 75 minutes in total. Just to kind of keep things simple. If it was 10 gallons a minute, so for 75 minutes, that's going to be 750 gallons of water for one cycle. So if it's at 12 gallons, you do the math. 12 times 75 minutes, that'll give you the amount of water you're going to be using for one watering cycle. So if we're using 700 gallons for Tuesday, we're watering 3 days a week, that's 2,100 gallons of water. Now we multiply that times 4, we're at 8,400 gallons of water. So this thing could add up real quick. So if you're watering every day, you could use anywhere from 10 to 20,000 gallons of water, depending on how big your yard is. Just to kind of keep that in mind, so you know what you're watering per cycle. And like I said before, if you have any questions, please feel free to call the office, 830-985-9115. Thank you again.